Today I want to show you how to configure the Svantek SV104A or SV104 BIS dosimeter using the Svantek Supervisor Lite software. So when you first start up the software without an instrument connected, you may see this. If you see a different looking screen, you may be using the other version of Supervisor that's called Supervisor Advanced. If you go up and click this, it'll give you a choice of, like, I could switch to Supervisor Advanced now. If you're in Supervisor Advanced, it'll let you switch back to Supervisor Lite, and I recommend starting in Supervisor Lite. So first thing I'm going to do is plug in the dosimeter to the USB cable, and it's turned off right now. It's just booting up, and we should see it connect in a second here. Okay, so what it's loading right now is the current configuration. So if you were to look at the settings and be okay with them, you could disconnect and just go and use the dosimeter as it is right now. But we're going to step through the basic settings and mostly focused on, majority is general settings for any part of the world, but I want to focus on the Canadian settings, which we'll get into here in a second. But one of the first things you want to notice is, okay, we've got the dosimeter connected, the model number and the serial numbers here. This clock, you want to make sure it's synchronized with your computer. If it's not synchronized with your computer, this will be red, and you click on this. And we can do this. Let's just synchronize it anyway. We just want to make sure it matches the time on your computer. The free memory is listed here, the firmware, and you can see last setup activation, last manual calibration. So now we want to get into actually programming the dosimeter for your application. So there, in this section here, there's profile 1, 2, and 3. Profile 1 is your main profile. This is the one I would focus on if whatever whatever preset you want to use. So we'll show you the presets here. So for Canada, we use ACGIH, but if you're in the US or another country, you may want to use one of these other standards. So when I select this, it actually automatically uh, sets the filter to A, the peak filter to C. Like, it sets all this for us basically. Now there are user ones you could define yourself. So you could use a US one here, but if you had a specific, say if you were using profile 1, and what this is basically like having 3 virtual dosimeters in one unit. If you want to really simplify things and you're only really worried about one measurement, then you could just use profile 1 only and turn the other 2 off, which we can do later in one of the other tabs. So like I said, if we were in the US, we may want to choose one of these other standards. Or if you want to do a custom one, you can just do user, and you could set these to whatever you want. Okay. And you'll get results for this, results for profile 2, results for profile 3 if you have them all turned on. Down here, there is alarms, and there's another video in my playlist that really talks more about the alarms, but there's a light on the front of the dosimeter. So if you program this and you come up to the person wearing it at the end of the day or somewhere along the way, and you see a red light blinking, you can have, for example, for dose, you could say when they hit 100% of their dose and you walk up and see that red light blinking, it's because they've hit 100% or 90% or whatever you set it to. Anyway, so moving on, that's profile 1 configured, and we're not going to really worry about the other 2 profiles. Now I can program this now, so if I click this, it'll load those settings into the dosimeter. I don't necessarily have to do it at that point, but you'll notice down here that now I have a time and date where I loaded that. If I went through everything and had 3 or 4 more dosimeters to program, I could go back into that time and date and import it back in and record, or basically program those other 4 dosimeters one after the other with these settings I've set up in this first one. So let's go to the second tab. So the dosimeter can just be a dosimeter, or you can add optional octoband analysis. So this would be if you had these features built into it. I won't really touch on this right now. It's kind of a more advanced thing for the dosimeter, but it is an option that can be added. either at time of purchase or down the road. It can be unlocked. The start delay, what that allows you to do, you could have the dosimeter programmed, ready to go, hit start and have some time to put it on the person, make sure it's affixed correctly, and it'll give you, in this case, 30 seconds before it actually starts to record in case there's some bumping around or noise that really isn't work exposure noise related. Also, start synchronization. I could have it start right on the next full minute or the next full 15 minutes or the next 30. So this kind of cleans up your data. Instead of, say, if I put it on a 1 minute and I start it, uh, it will basically wait till the next full minute and then start. So you won't get a data point at 36 seconds, 1 minute, 36 seconds, 2 minutes, 36 seconds. It'll be right on the start of that minute. Now, integration period, that's the time that it actually looks at the noise and is comparing it. So if I leave it on infinity, basically when you hit start on the dosimeter, it will start integrating or looking at that period right until when you turn it off. So if it's 3 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, 12, it'll just keep going. Now you could tell it to look at, maybe you're only interested in, say, an hour or something like that. Uh, you could just say, I just want a result after 1 hour. So take a reading for 1 hour, give me a total summary for that one time, or you could have it do it once, twice, three or four. But anyway, there's a lot of options in here for this repeat cycles and the integration period. A good one to start with is just infinity and one cycle. So when you turn it on, it stays on for as long as you keep it running. When you stop it, it will basically be the result over that time period. The LEQ integration, you want to leave that to linear. The exposure time, now what you could do, uh, if your workplace has a 10-hour workday, you could change this to 10. Or if somebody works a 12-hour shift, you could even put it up to 12 hours. But if it's an 8-hour work shift, you could just leave it to 8 hours or whatever the normal work shift is. And for LEQ or LAV, you would leave that to both, so it would be able to record that. The time history, let's go into this. So this is setting up the data log. So first you want to make sure that it is turned on and data logging. Now you can set this, the logger step, from as fast as 100 milliseconds right up to an hour. Probably a good one, if you want to, I mean, it's still a lot of data points, would be 1 second. And you can see kind of how that works. Now, this is the name of the file. So we could call this, or you could call it some kind of a study name. What'll happen is every time you do a run or run the dosimeter, in this case, it would be Ken, and then would put one after it, two after it, three. It just, each successive recording, it'll just add another number to it. The summary results, uh, you want to leave those on as well. Now, we have profile. So the profile results, we're really only interested in profile 1. If you were running a project where you wanted profile 2 and profile 3 results, you could turn those on and record. There is a lot of memory in the dosimeter, so you could leave them on for this purpose. And I'm only really interested in ACGIH, the profile 1 setting for Canada. I've turned off, or I'm going to turn off profile 2 and profile 3 recordings, like which I've done here. So let's look at the display settings. So this is what you're going to see actually on the dosimeter itself. The dosimeter still records a lot of, or all these readings, for example, are can be downloaded and viewed on the software, but this is more what you would actually see on the screen. So we want to see running results, or a results list on the screen. We want to get the running sound level. You could have the file information. So as I set the file to Ken, so it would be Ken 1, 2, 3. Also, you want to see instrument status. Now, I don't really care about profile 2 or 3, so I'm going to turn those off. Things here like the main view. This would be when you first turn it on, what you'd see. So you could have results list, file info, but main view, profile 1 is the only one we're interested in, is the only one we have turned on right now. And L is your sound level, but you could have that. So basically when you start up the dosimeter, you're going to see sound level as your main first parameter. Screen auto off. If once the dosimeter is running on the person, this would blank out the screen to save battery. So we probably want that on. Auto rotate when you're looking at it. If you have it upside down, it'll rotate the display. So that's probably good to have on as well. Now, on the display results, remember all this is available when you download in the software anyway. This is only if you want to see it on the actual dosimeter when you walk up to it. So time, I guess you'd want to see that. Um, the peak sound. Now you may want to go through this and just, if you don't recognize some results or some of these, you could turn them off. Again, when you download, you have access to these anyway. There's certain ones I've turned off, like the minimum sound, like that originally, I'd probably turn that off because I don't really care about what the lowest sound is. But dose, and this is predicted dose over 8 hours. Anyway, the LEQ, I'd probably want to turn that on. But again, you have access to these anyway. So moving on, if I go to general. Okay, so we have 4 different segments here. The first one under calibration, this is where you set what the calibration frequency is with your calibrator. So you'd want to use the calibrator with the dosimeter. The normal one we sell with it is 114 decibel, but you may have another calibrator with a different frequency. So there are different ones available. So you'd want to get that off the documentation with your calibrator. So 114 post calibration, we could turn that off. We could have it after the last file or files after last calibration. So this is basically, maybe having files after last, or no, last file would probably be the way to go. And auto calibrate, what that is if you take the dosimeter and you put the calibrator on it, it'll automatically, if there's 114 decibels coming into it from the calibrator, it'll automatically recognize that it's supposed to auto calibrate, and it'll ask if you want to calibrate. And there's a video showing how that works. So if you turn that off, the auto calibration doesn't work. If you turn it on, it will it'll automatically pick that up after a couple of seconds and let you auto calibrate. These statistical levels, you probably don't have to mess around with those. It's more of an advanced function. So just leave those as they are normally. Now, the keyboard, when you put it on the person that you're monitoring, a good idea is to have it lock during the measurement. So if you turn this on, that way they couldn't turn off the power or stop it or start it by mistake, or stop it when it's running. So to have this turned on is a good idea. Now, unlock on key, what this does is, this is the sequence to unlock it. So you would, in this case, we'd hit the down key, the right key, the enter key, and the down key to unlock it. So we want to turn this on to be able to use this code to unlock it. Now you could change this if you want to simplify it. You could have it just all enter keys or all right keys, but it's four key presses to unlock the dosimeter. Down here, we've got warning. Again, this isn't really that important. It's just warning you if the logging is disabled. Also, if for some reason you pump or you have to hit the power button, it'll warn you that it was going to shut off before it does. You can also make comments, like you can actually record into dosimeter some comments, and this is where you could actually label the file, label the text file basically. So you could call this voice comments. The dosimeter also can measure if it's knocked or bumped. So you can set the sensitivity of that here. So if you want it very sensitive to a bump or knock, you could set it to 1G, or you want it less sensitive, you could set it to 6 or 7. The language, you have different languages available. And also if the dosimeter is not running, like it's not actually recording but just turned on, in this case, if it isn't started, after 5 minutes it'll power off. So maybe you've used it for the day, you put it back in the box, you forget to turn it off, just so the battery doesn't die. It waits 5 minutes. If you haven't pressed a key, then it shuts down, so it's ready for next time. The next tab is auto run. So there's two sides. There's pauses or breaks, and then there's auto run, where you can have it basically wake up and automatically record. So if we use pause, say if we start someone or start the dosimeter on someone at 8 o'clock in the morning, but they have a break somewhere along the way. So we could set it to whatever time. So maybe they have a break between 10 and 10:30. So the dosimeter stays on the person, but it stops recording and stops measuring between 10 and 10:30. And at 10:30 it wakes up again and continues. Maybe we have another pause. And again, these are adjustable, right? So I can change the time on here. So we have up to 5 pauses. And so that basically is a time where the worker isn't exposed to work noise, they're on a break, and it allows you to automatically have this pause and then restart again. So let's turn those off for now. If I turn on the timer, this would be say if I was doing a study on and I wanted, actually I'll turn off these. We could put the dosimeter on someone Monday morning. We could put it on at 6 a.m. and if we want to measure from 8 to 4, this would basically tell the dosimeter Monday at 8 o'clock, wake up and run until 4 o'clock and then stop. Now, maybe I want to do that Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And so every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, because we set it to infinity, it'll wake up on the person and take those measurements. And or we could say do that one sequence, so it would run through it once, or maybe do it twice. And it's fairly adjustable, so that's kind of a nice feature. You don't have to be there to actually start and stop the dosimeter during a run or a session. Now, that is automatically starting and stopping. You always have the the first option where you just program it. You walk up, put it on the person, and hit start. You let it do its recording, and you come back and stop it. And you don't have to use this at all, but it is a nice feature to have. Now, the last tab is recording. So there's two different ways and what this is actually recording real audio of an event. There's two different ways of recording. One is a WAV file. The WAV file is stored not in the actual data. It's stored as a separate WAV file that you could look at, or you could listen to, basically. My recommendation is to use the event recording, because when you download the readings, any event, an event is basically, again, this is a real, and this is an option that gets added to the dosimeter if you decide you want this. So say you get a really large peak in the data, a very loud noise, you may or may not know what it is. So you can, with this feature, you can actually click on this event recording in the data and play back an audio file of the exact whatever made that noise. Was it a loud truck? Was it a jackhammer? Was it someone listening to the radio too loud? You can decide if it's worth keeping in the data or eliminating. So what we want to do here is there's different ways to trigger this recording. We could trigger on the slope, or we could trigger on the level. If we trigger on the slope, we can use a certain filter. The Z filter basically means there's no filtering, so that's probably the one to use. There's different quality of the recording. You can probably hear with even 12 kilohertz, you can distinguish what the sound is most likely. If you want to go to better quality and make a bigger file, you can do that with 24 hertz, but 12 is probably fine. The trigger level, in this case, we've got it set to 100. Anything over 100, or when it hits 100, will trigger, and it'll record an actual audio file. And let's see here. And we want to turn on the pre-trigger, and what that'll do is it'll catch the value right like a couple of seconds before the actual event occurs. And the recording limit, this would be a 10-second recording, but we don't really need that. We could, but usually like 3 or 4 seconds of it is more than enough to figure out exactly what that is. So this is really kind of fun to play around with, to set this, wear the dosimeter around. That might be a bit high, so you may want to set it lower, but you can actually look at the data, see the data, and then click on the event and hear what you're exposed to, and then again decide if you want to keep that in the data or eliminate it. I always encourage you to download the manual and look at this in more detail, but this is a pretty basic setup for a Canadian dosimeter using the ACGIH values. So the last thing I'm going to do here is activate it. So I'll send the recording to the unit. And what I've got stored here is the last one. So if I hit the next dosimeter to do, I could just import this again, program it, and away I go.